I've always had a goal to hit 1,000 likes on a video, but you legends smashed past that and got one of my videos to over 2K likes. Let's break even more records on this video. Please smash that like button. And I want to try this one thing. I want to know who my devoted listeners are. So once you've done that, comment down below that you hit that like button hard, or even a kind message. Let's see who our loyal devoted viewers are. You know who you are. Once again, thank you guys so much. Now to these amazing stories.
I used to think getting catfished was something that only happened to people who weren't paying attention. Like, if someone falls for a fake profile, they probably ignore the obvious signs. Right. That was what I believed until it actually happened to me. And the worst part is it wasn't even just about someone lying about their looks. The whole thing went way deeper than I ever expected. It messed me up for a while. Still kind of does, honestly. This started last year when I was stuck in a weird part of my life. I just dropped out of college because I couldn't afford it anymore, and I was working night shifts at this warehouse in a town that felt like it hadn't changed since 1995. Everyone my age had already left or was planning to. I wasn't even really looking for anyone at the time. I was mostly just scrolling through dating apps to kill time between shifts. That's my match with Ellie. Her profile was simple, a few photos, all kind of low quality, nothing crazy or heavily edited, but they were taken from good angles, you know. She looked skinny, kind of artsy. One of those girls who probably listened to old, sad music and posted photos of her journal or candles. She had shoulder-length black hair, dark circles under her eyes, and she wore big sweaters that hung off one shoulder. There was something quiet and tired about her that I found weirdly attractive. She messaged me first. That should have been the first red flag, honestly. But it didn't feel weird at the time. We started talking, and it felt normal. She said she lived just outside town and didn't come into the city much because she didn't like crowds. Said she worked from home doing freelance stuff, mostly writing. She always responded late at night, never during the day. At first, I thought that was because she was just busy or maybe she worked nights like I did. But it started to feel like she was only ever online when it was dark out. We talked for about 3 weeks before I brought up meeting in person. She dodged it the first couple times, said she was sick or that her car wasn't working. I let it go because honestly I wasn't pushing that hard. I liked texting her. It gave me something to look forward to. She would say things like she felt like I actually saw her, or that she'd never clicked with someone this fast. That stuff feels good to hear, especially when you're feeling stuck in life. Then one night she said I should come to her place. Just like that. Out of nowhere, she gave me an address that was way out of town, past some industrial area I'd never really been to. I remember looking it up on maps and seeing it was near this old trailer park and some abandoned grain silos. Kinda creepy, but I figured whatever. She probably just lived sheep. I drove out there after work, still in my uniform, running on no sleep and way too much gas station coffee. The address took me to this old house set back from the road. It was dark and the porch light was flickering. There were piles of junk in the yard, like broken furniture, old car parts, even a shopping cart half buried in the weeds. I sat in my car for a few minutes thinking maybe I should just leave. But I'd driven all that way and she finally agreed to meet, so I got out and knocked on the door. She didn't answer for a while, long enough that I started to think I'd been stood up. But then the door opened just a crack and she peeked out. Except it wasn't her. Not exactly. I mean, it was her face kind of. The same dark hair, pale skin, big sweater. But she wasn't skinny. Not even close. I don't mean a little different than her photos. I mean completely different body. She was huge, and not just in weight, like physically imposing. Tall, broad shoulders like a different person entirely. Her face was still kind of pretty in a tired, ghostly way, but everything else didn't match anything she'd shown me. She didn't say anything, just opened the door wider and stepped aside, like she expected me to come in. I should have turned around, but I was tired and confused and honestly just curious. The house was freezing. The floors creaked with every step, and it smelled like wet carpet and something faintly rotten. There were weird piles of clothes in the hallway, none of them folded, just dumped. The windows were all covered, not just with curtains but with foil and black trash bags taped over them. I asked her if she lived alone, and she just shrugged. That's when I noticed there were no lights on in the house. Just a few candles scattered around. Not like cozy candlelight, more like survival candles. There was this low hum, like an old fridge or some generator running in the basement, and this faint static sound coming from somewhere, like a radio stuck between stations. She took me into this back room that was basically empty except for a stained mattress on the floor and a bunch of notebooks stacked in the corners. She sat down on the mattress and stared at me without saying anything. Just watched me while I stood there trying to think of what to say. She finally asked if I thought she looked different than in her photos. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to be a jerk. I told her she looked tired. She laughed, but it didn't sound real. Then she said something like, "You can leave now if you want, but I'd rather you didn't." That hit weird. Not threatening exactly, but uncomfortable. I told her I had to work early and made an excuse. She didn't argue, just watched me leave. As I walked back down the hallway, I passed this half-open door and glanced in. It was pitch black, but I saw something. Someone, standing in the corner. Could have been a coat rack maybe, but looked like a person. Tall, not moving. I didn't say anything. Just got out of there. I blocked her number the second I got back in the car. Drove home with every light on and didn't sleep for 2 days. Later, I tried to look up the address she gave me. It didn't show up anymore. I went back on the app to see if her profile was still there. It was gone too. No trace of her. It messed with my head. I don't know who she really was or what she wanted. But I got this feeling that whatever was going on in that house, I'd barely scratched the surface. I was lucky to leave when I did. I met Dean on Instagram during a time when I probably shouldn't have been trying to meet anyone. I just moved to a new city and didn't really know anybody yet. I was bored, lonely, and scrolling a lot. He messaged me first, replied to a story I posted about an old movie, and from there we just sort of fell into talking every day. It wasn't like instant sparks or anything, but he was easy to talk to. Funny polite. He said he lived across town and worked as an electrician, which I thought was kind of cool. I liked that he wasn't some fake influencer or trying too hard. His profile didn't look sketchy either, not like a bot or anything. He had pictures with his dog, a few of him at work, and some of him just out in nature. Nothing fancy, but believable. We talked for a few weeks before I agreed to meet him. He was always a little vague about when he was free. He'd say stuff like work had been crazy, or he was helping a friend move, or his truck was in the shop. At first, I didn't think too much of it. People are busy. I was too. But it started to feel like every time we made plans, something got in the way. Still, he'd text me every day, send voice messages, even a few selfies just to prove he was real, and I believed him. It's weird how you can start feeling like someone's part of your life even if you've never met them. I'd wake up to good morning texts, send him pictures of what I was eating or my cat, tell him random things about my day. He started calling me Vave. I didn't stop him. I kind of liked it. He made me feel like I had something solid in this weird, floaty part of my life, like I wasn't just alone in this new city. The first real red flag came about 2 months in. I posted a photo of a park I was walking through and he messaged me, asking if I was near the fountain. He said he used to go there all the time as a kid. No big deal, right? But when I replied and asked him about it, he suddenly stopped responding, like for a whole day. Then he came back with a weird excuse, said his phone had died and he'd just gotten it charged again. But I checked the message. He'd seen my reply 2 minutes after I sent it. He just didn't answer. I brushed it off. I wanted to believe he was telling the truth. But that was the first time I felt something was off. We finally made plans to meet. I told him I was going to be at this weekend market near downtown with a couple of coworkers, and he said he'd swing by. I didn't tell him about him. It was still just this private thing in my life. He texted me that morning saying he was on his way. I waited. An hour passed, then 2. No ding. Later that night, I got a message from a different account. No profile picture, no followers. Just one message. It said, "Stop texting my husband." At first I thought it was a scam, like someone trying to mess with me or scare me. But then I saw that the name in the bio was Lisa M., and her location matched the same city Dean said he was from. My stomach dropped. I didn't reply, but I clicked through her old tagged photos, and that's where I saw him. Dean. Same face, same dog, same truck, except in these photos, he was holding a little girl in his arms, next to a woman with the same last name as the account. I remember sitting at my bed in total silence, scrolling through every post. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, a beach trip from last year. He was in all of them, smiling like he hadn't just been texting me that he missed me 2 days before. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to message her, but what would I even say? That I didn't know. That I believed him. That I fell for someone who turned out to be living a whole different life behind the scenes. I just sat there staring at my phone. I felt gross. Not angry at first, just stupid and gross, like I'd been pulled into something I didn't sign up for. The next day, he messaged me like nothing had happened. Said his weekend was insane and he was sorry he couldn't make it to the market. I didn't reply. I just watched the 3 dots bounce up and down while he kept trying to explain. Eventually, I blocked him. Then I blocked Alyssa's account too, because I didn't want to see any more. I deleted all the photos, the screenshots, even the voice messages. But for days afterward, I kept thinking about all the little lies he told, the random excuses, the weird gaps in communication. And I kept thinking about her, the wife, the kid. Did they have any idea? Part of me wanted to reach out to her again, just to send everything and let her decide. But I didn't. Maybe I should have. I don't know. It's been months now. I still think about it sometimes when I scroll past someone who looks like him or when a guy I talk to says he's bad at texting during the day. I don't fall for things as quickly anymore. Not because I'm paranoid, just because I know now that people can lie so easily. And not just about who they are, but about their whole life, their family, their house, everything. Sometimes I wonder if he's still doing it. If there's another girl out there getting the same messages I used to get, waking up to the same fake good mornings, sending him photos of her cat like it means something. I hope not, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't really talk about this much because it still feels insane even thinking back on it, like something out of a bad crime movie. But I swear this actually happened, and it still messes with my head sometimes. It started a couple years ago when I was 20 and messing around on a dating app during a boring summer. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just trying to talk to people and kill time. That's when I matched with this girl named Gina. She had this cool, almost mysterious vibe. Her photos weren't overly filtered or fake looking, but she was hot. Not Instagram model hot, but more like effortlessly pretty, like she didn't care and still looked good. Her bio was super basic, just said she was into photography, animals, and coffee. That's it. But she had this way of talking. Through messages, that was different. She didn't overshare. She kept things short, but not in a cold way. It made me curious. We started talking, and she'd reply late at night, usually. Said she worked weird hours and helped out with family stuff during the day. I didn't push for details. Everyone's got their own life. She said she lived in a nearby city about 45 minutes from mine, which wasn't a big deal. She told me her family owned a few businesses. Vague, but again, I didn't ask a ton of questions at the time. I just thought, okay, maybe they're just private or old school or whatever. After a few weeks of talking, I asked to meet. She always thought a reason to postpone. One week it was her cousin's wedding. Another week it was car trouble. Once she said her dad didn't like her going out late. I was starting to get weird vibes, but she kept things interesting. She'd send me pictures of her food or pets, random street shots she said she took on film. They looked legit. Sometimes she'd even send voice notes, and she sounded sweet, kind of quiet. There was something about the way she talked that felt like she was always watching her words. Then one night she messaged me and asked if I wanted to meet her in person. Finally. But she didn't want to meet in public. She said her family didn't like strangers around the house and that she was only allowed to bring people over if she trusted them. That should have been a huge red flag. But at the time I was just flattered. I thought she trusted me. She sent me an address that was on the outskirts of the city, not far from an industrial area. I looked it up and it was in a kind of rundown neighborhood. Not sketchy, just quiet. I drove out there at like 10 p.m., which now seems completely insane. But I didn't think much of it at the time. The house was huge, way bigger than I expected. Not modern, more like one of those old brick places with high walls and a gated driveway. There were cameras on the corners of the roof and 2 black cars parked outside that looked brand new. I started to feel off before I even rang the bell, but then the door opened before I could. Like someone was already watching me. This guy in a suit opened the door and didn't say anything. Just looked me up and down and stepped aside. I stepped in, and everything was dead silent. Inside looked like something out of a mansion from the 90s, weird mix of expensive and outdated. Gold frames, leather chairs, dark wood walls. I asked if Gina was home and the guy told me to wait in a side room. That's the only thing he said. So I waited for like 20 minutes. No TV, no music, nothing. Just silence. I started to get up to leave when Gina finally walked in. She looked like her pictures mostly. A little older maybe and taller than I thought. But it was her. She said she was sorry for the weirdness and that her family was super traditional and protective. She said she didn't usually bring people to the house, and that if her dad found out, he'd lose it. We talked for a bit. She was different in person. Nervous, kind of stiff. Like she was scared someone might hear us. I asked her what her family did, and she hesitated. Then she told me straight up her dad was involved in certain business, and that it was better I didn't ask too many questions. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. That's when things started clicking. The cars, the cameras, the way the guy at the door looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be there. I asked if I should go, and she said probably yeah. But she thanked me for coming and told me not to message her anymore. At least not on the app. I left without saying much. The guy who let me in followed me out and stood at the gate until I drove off. I had this knot in my stomach the whole ride home. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I started digging into things the next morning. I searched the address, her name, her family, anything I could find. And it turns out her last name, which she never gave me, was tied to some guy who got arrested a few years back for racketeering. There were articles, photos. One of the cars I saw in the driveway was in the background of one of the news pictures. Same plate. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just catfished by someone who lied about their life. I was talking to the daughter of a freaking mafia boss. For weeks. Telling her about my life, sending her stupid selfies, talking about what shows I was watching, like an idiot. Meanwhile, her family probably had people following her around and vetting anyone she talked to. I deleted everything. The app, the messages, her number. I even changed my phone for a while. I kept thinking someone was going to show up at my door one night, not because I did anything wrong, but just because I'd have too close. I don't think she meant to mess with me, but I don't think she ever really planned on letting me into her life either. I think it was just someone to talk to when she was bored or lonely or stuck. That whole summer feels like a blur now, but I'll never forget the house. Or the way she looked at me like she knew this wasn't going to go anywhere from the second I walked in. And no, I never heard from her again. I wasn't even planning to match with anyone that night. I was half asleep in bed, aimlessly swiping through this dumb dating app just because I was bored. That's when Adam popped up. His profile wasn't anything wild, just a couple photos. One with him standing near a car, another one in a hoodie, and one of him hiking. Tall, brown hair, kind of a quiet vibe. Not hot, but definitely cute. The kind of guy who looked like he read books in the park or helped old ladies reach the top shelf of the store. He said he was 6'2" in his bio. I don't usually even care about that stuff, but I'm 5'9", and finding someone taller than me is rare, so I was like, all right, cool. We matched, started chatting. He was super sweet, not overly confident, not trying too hard, but still made me laugh. He said he worked freelance, something with IT and websites. Talked a lot about liking quiet mornings and black coffee and hiking alone. It was kind of poetic sometimes. Not in a cringe way, just chill. But now thinking back, it was weird how little he let me see. He never wanted to FaceTime. Said his phone camera was broken. Never sent selfies. He only ever used oldish-looking photos. I asked him once to send a pic holding up 2 fingers or something, just jokingly, and he laughed it off. At the time, I didn't press him. I just thought maybe he was shy. We talked for 3 weeks straight. He messaged me every morning. Asked how I was sleeping. Sent me long rants about movies and random science stuff. It got deep. I told him about my weird family, my anxiety, how I hated my job. He listened. Actually listened. It felt like someone finally got me in a way most people didn't. Eventually, we decided to meet. He picked this random quiet cafe on the edge of town. Said he liked the vibe there. I agreed to it even though it was a bit of a drive. I was kind of nervous, but mostly excited. I even told my best friend I might be meeting someone real for once. I got there early and waited outside. The place was empty except for a guy in a dark jacket sitting near the door. I kept checking my phone. Adam messaged me, said he was already inside, and waved at me. I looked again and the guy by the door waved. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the guy in the pictures, or if it was, it had to be from 10 years ago. This guy was short, like really short. I don't care about height that much, but this wasn't 6'2". This was like maybe 4'11" at best. He had the same eyes, same hair kind of, but everything else was different. His head looked big for his body, his legs were short and stiff when he stood up, and the way he moved was just off. I didn't know what to do. I sat down anyway. I was trying to process everything. I wasn't even mad at first. I just felt weird. Like I was watching something happen from outside my body. He smiled like nothing was wrong. Started talking about coffee and how nice it was to finally meet. I didn't even know what to say. My brain was still catching up. I kept nodding and smiling, but inside I was screaming. It wasn't just that he lied. It was that he lied so casually, like it didn't matter. Like the last 3 weeks hadn't been fake. He talked exactly the same, like nothing had changed. I asked him why he never told me the truth, and he just kind of laughed and said, "Would you have still talked to me?" That messed me up. After the coffee, he asked if I wanted to go for a walk. I said no. Told him I had stuff to do. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. I went home and tried to just shake it off, but then the weird stuff started. He started messaging me constantly. Not angry, just intense. Saying how great the date went, how perfect we were, how he hadn't felt this way in years. Then came the voice notes. Like 4 or 5 a day. His voice got slower, quieter. I couldn't explain it, but he sounded different. Off. Then one night I came home and there was a single rose taped to my door. No note. Just that. I knew it was him. No one else even knew where I lived except my close friends. I freaked out and messaged him asking how he found my place. He said I must have told him and forgotten. I hadn't. I checked every message. I never gave him my address. I blocked him. Everywhere. The app. My number. Socials. He made new accounts. Sent me emails. Signed off everyone with, "I know you're scared, but we're supposed to be together." I went to the police, but all they did was tell me to document everything and call if he showed up again. They didn't take it seriously because he hadn't technically done anything threatening, but I felt like I was being watched. Once I was walking in my car and I thought I saw him across the parking lot, just standing by a tree. I got in and drove off. Didn't even look twice. Another time, someone rang my apartment buzzer and no one was there. I stopped sleeping well. Started double-checking my locks. Took different routes home. Eventually, the messages stopped. The emails stopped. It just went quiet. No explanation. No closure. Like he gave up or moved on or maybe found someone else to lie to. To this day, I still don't fully understand what his endgame was. Did he think I'd just accept it? That I'd fall in love with the idea of him and ignore everything else? Maybe he thought if he kept the fantasy going long enough, I'd get used to it. I don't know. All I know is that I'll never forget the way he looked when he stood up at that cafe. The way he smiled like everything was normal, like nothing was fake. That image still pops in my head sometimes when I meet someone new. Not because of how he looked, but because of how far someone can go pretending to be someone they're not. I never thought it would get this bad. I mean, I knew lying online was messed up, but I thought it was just a dumb crush thing. Just harmless. Like everyone does it a little, right? I had this guy I liked. His name was Jake. We met online in some random gaming chat, and I was obsessed. Like totally head over heels. But I wasn't brave enough to be myself with him. My real photos weren't anything like what he'd expect. So I started sending pictures of someone else. Someone prettier, thinner, perfect, well, as perfect as you can get with filters and editing apps. At first, it was just a joke. A little game to catch his attention. I'd dig up old photos from years ago before everything got messy with my weight and how I looked. Then I'd add layers of filters to smooth my skin, brighten my eyes, and slim my face. The pictures I sent didn't look like me at all, but that version of me got his attention. He started talking to me more, texting late at night, asking about my life, my dreams. I was living in this fake world, but it felt good, better than real life. It felt like maybe, just maybe, someone could see me as someone worth liking. For months, I kept the lie alive. I was terrified to tell him the truth. I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to be the fat girl he'd ignore once he saw the real me. So I buried myself deeper into this fantasy. answering his messages with the voice of that perfect girl I'd created, avoiding video calls and any chance to meet in person. But Jake wasn't dumb. He started pushing for a meeting, and my heart dropped every time. I kept making excuses, busy, sick, work, but he was persistent. Eventually, there was no avoiding it. He wanted to meet. I wanted to run. I begged myself not to go, but then I convinced myself maybe he'd be kind, maybe he'd understand, maybe he'd see past the pictures to me. Maybe. The day came and I dressed in my nicest clothes, trying to hide behind my hair and makeup. I picked a small coffee shop halfway between us, a place with low lights and corners where you could disappear. I got there early and sat with my head down, watching the door. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. I felt like my stomach was twisting itself into knots, every breath shallow and quick. What if he hated me? What if he laughed? What if I just couldn't do this? Jake walked in right on time. My breath caught. He was exactly like the pictures, tall, lean, confident. But the moment he saw me, his smile dropped. His eyes didn't look at me like I was someone he liked. They flicked over me like I was a joke, a bad one. My chest tightened, and I suddenly felt invisible and exposed all at once. I wanted to run. I wanted to explain, to cry, to beg him not to be cruel. But he didn't say anything. He just pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of me right there. I froze. I was embarrassed, humiliated, shaking in my chair. He snapped photos from every angle, catching my awkward smile, my sweaty hands. The wing eyes darted away. Every click of the camera was like a punch to my gut. He posted them online almost immediately. Screenshots, comments, and his messages to me about how he'd been fooled and how this is what real looks like. My phone exploded with notifications, people sharing, laughing, tagging their friends. I felt like I disappeared inside my own skin. The whole coffee shop blurred around me as my world shattered. The worst part wasn't just the lies or the exposure, it was the betrayal. I thought we had something, even if it was all fake. I thought maybe he'd be decent enough to understand that people mess up, that I was scared that I wanted to be liked. But no, he turned it into a public show. Like I was some kind of freak for wanting to look different online. The notifications kept coming. Messages flooded in, some cruel, some curious, all judgmental. People I barely knew sent screenshots calling me names, telling me to just be honest next time, or worse. I felt naked in front of a crowd that wasn't even there physically but still seemed to close in on me. My phone became a source of pain and panic. I stopped going outside for weeks. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for more hate. My friends tried to reach out, but I pushed them away. How do you explain that you got catfished in reverse? That the guy you liked wasn't the one lying, but the one who humiliated you for it? I wasn't proud of what I did, but I never thought someone could be so cruel about it. At school, the whispers started, quiet at first, then louder. People who used to say I now avoided eye contact. I'd catch them glancing at their phones, smirking, then quickly looking away. It was like I was living in a nightmare where everyone knew my secret and judged me for it. I felt trapped in my own mistake, but worse. It felt like I was paying for his anger, not mine. The online harassment wasn't the worst, though. It was the feeling that no one would ever trust me again, or see me as anything but that fake girl Jake exposed. I was haunted by the idea that my biggest secret wasn't safe anymore. That maybe I was only worth liking if I was someone I wasn't. I tried to block everything, but the screenshots lived forever. I deleted social media, changed my number, moved accounts to private. The damage was done. The digital world remembers everything. Even strangers sent me messages about what I'd done. The pain of being exposed, humiliated, and judged like that dug deep. Jake didn't just break my trust. He broke me. And the worst part, I still find myself wondering what could have happened if I told the truth earlier. Would he have stayed? Would things have been different? Or would it have ended anyway, but without the public shame? I guess the biggest horror in all of this wasn't the catfish game itself. It was how quickly kindness disappeared the moment he found out the truth. The way a person you thought like you could turn around and use your worst moment to tear you down publicly. That was the real nightmare. Looking back, I can see where I went wrong, but I also see how cruel people can be when they're hurt or embarrassed. And in the end, it wasn't just a dumb crush or a harmless lie that got exposed. It was a reminder that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. No filters can fix that. I'd never thought I'd get caught up in something this messed up. It started out normal enough, just scrolling through some dating app because I was bored and tired of swiping past the same faces. You know how it is. Endless profiles. Everyone looking polished, but somehow still kind of fake. Then Aldi showed up. His pictures were all polished, a little fancy, but in a chill way. Like a guy who knew how to dress and didn't take himself too seriously, but still had money. The kind of guy you imagine with a nice apartment, maybe a job where he travels a lot, drinks good whiskey, and actually remembers birthdays. His bio was vague, nothing weird, just something like, looking for something real, no games. I thought, okay, that's cool. I messaged him first, which I usually don't do, but for some reason I felt like I wanted to know more about him. We started chatting, and he was funny and charming. Nothing sketchy, nothing that set off alarm bells. He talked about art galleries, fancy dinners, trips to places I couldn't afford, and honestly, I was hooked. His words made it feel like I was finally meeting someone who could be different from all the mess I'd been through before. Aldi sent me pictures, sure, but they were all fancy shots. No casual selfies. It was always some sleek filtered photo, like the kind you see in magazines. I figured that was normal for someone who traveled a lot or lived that kind of lifestyle. He kept saying how he loved to spoil the right girl, how he liked to take care of people. I thought, wow, maybe I actually hit the jackpot. Like, maybe this is the kind of guy who would actually treat me better than the mess I usually date. Then the weird stuff started. He always dodged any kind of video calls, saying his work was confidential or his phone was acting up. I thought maybe he was just private, which I can respect. But I got curious. The way he talked about money and gifts made me think, okay, maybe he was one of those guys looking for a sugar baby. But I didn't care. The attention felt nice, and honestly, the idea of someone wanting to spoil me felt like a dream. Someone who saw me as worth something. We talked for a few months, and every time he mentioned meeting up, something came up. A business trip, a sudden emergency, a friend he had to help. I thought maybe he was just busy. But then the asks started. Send me a little video. Show me your room. Let me hear your voice. He never got angry, but it was like he was building this picture of me in his head and wanted to make sure it matched whatever fantasy he was holding on to. One day, I sent him a video of me singing softly, just a casual clip from my bedroom. I wasn't trying to impress him. I just wanted him to hear the real me, maybe feel like this was genuine. After that, the messages slowed down. He stopped calling me babe and stopped talking about trips or fancy dinners. Then came the long silences. I asked what was wrong, and he said nothing, just tired. That's when I got suspicious. I started paying more attention, looking at every detail in his photos. I did reverse image searches, something I never thought I'd have to do. The truth hit like a punch to the gut. The guy in the photos wasn't Ollie at all. It was some rich businessman who had no idea someone was stealing his pictures and pretending to be him. The real Ollie was some old man. Not like your average grandpa either. More like the kind of guy who hangs around online, looking for young girls to take care of. A total predator. I felt sick. My chest felt heavy, my hands shook. I blocked him immediately, but the damage was done. I kept thinking about how close I got to meeting him. How creepy it would have been to actually be face to face with that old man pretending to be someone else. The thought made my skin crawl like something was crawling under it, twisting and turning. I told a couple of friends about it, and they were shocked, but honestly, no one really knew what to say. It's hard to explain how disgusting it feels to be used like that. To realize that the person you thought was charming and sweet was really just looking for a sugar baby to control, to manipulate. A person who never cared about me, just the idea of me. The worst part wasn't just the lies. It was how slowly it all unfolded, how I kept making excuses for him, how I wanted to believe it was real, and how I almost lost myself in that fantasy. I'd stay up late waiting for messages, replaying his words in my head, trying to convince myself this was something special. I haven't gone back on that app since. I deleted it, removed all my profiles. I'm still not sure if I trust anyone online again. Even when someone new pops up, I feel this nagging voice telling me to be suspicious, to keep my guard up. It's exhausting. It's weird how just a few months of talking to someone can change the way you see the world. How something that started as a simple crush turned into this whole nightmare of deception and disgust. I used to think dating apps were fun, a way to meet new people. Now they feel like traps. That's the thing about catfishing. It's not just about fake pictures or fake profiles. It's about how people use those lies to get close, to mess with your head, to take advantage. And sometimes, the truth isn't just disappointing, it's terrifying. It makes you wonder how many people out there are pretending, How many have dark motives hidden behind perfect pictures and charming words? I still catch myself wondering what might have happened if I'd met him in person. Would I have run the moment I saw the real Ollie? Would I have gotten away? Or would it have been something worse, something I don't want to even imagine? Now, every time I get a message from someone new, a tiny part of me hopes it's different. But the bigger part, it's scared. Scared of being fooled again, scared of trusting someone who isn't real. The damage catfishing does isn't just about lies. It's about breaking down trust, shattering the hope that maybe, just maybe, you can find someone genuine out there. And honestly, that's the kind of horror story that doesn't have a neat ending. It just leaves you with a warning: be careful who you believe. Because sometimes the person behind the screen is nothing like the one you think you know. You know how people say online dating is like rolling the dice? Well, I rolled and ended up way off the board with this girl named Anne. At first, she seemed cool, like really cool in this artsy, quirky way that made me want to talk to her. But it didn't take long for things to get strange. So, Anne and I matched late one Friday night. Her profile was filled with pictures of her at theater shows, some with dramatic makeup, some with her holding a script. She looked like she lived and breathed stage life. I thought that was interesting, so I sent her a message. We started chatting, and I swear she was one of the most energetic people I'd ever talked to online. But here's the thing, she wasn't just energetic. She acted like she was on stage all the time. Like the moment I got to know her, it was like I was trapped in some weird musical. Every time we talked, Anne would randomly break into these short bursts of singing. Not in hey, here's a song kind of way, but like she was mid-performance, dropping lines from musicals like it was normal conversation. It freaked me out at first, but I figured maybe she was just super passionate about theater and wanted to share that part of herself. I mean, who am I to judge? The thing is, it wasn't just cute or quirky. It was intense. Like, she'd be telling me about her day, and then suddenly sing a line from Les Miserables or Phantom of the Opera, and then immediately switch back to normal talking. Sometimes the lines she sang made no sense in the context of what we were discussing. It was like she was living two lives, one in real life, one on stage, and the lines kept bleeding into each other. We kept talking every day. She talked about wanting to be on Broadway someday, how theater was her whole world. She was so dramatic that even her texts had this over-the-top flair, like she was narrating a play. But there was something off beneath it all. I started noticing contradictions in her stories, like how she'd mention being in this tiny local production, but then say she'd been to New York to network. It didn't add up. Then came the video calls. I thought maybe seeing her in real life would make things feel more normal. Nope. She showed up on camera dressed like she was auditioning for a musical, complete with stage makeup and these intense expressions. She kept bursting into song mid-call, sometimes humming tunes, sometimes full-on singing lines from shows I'd never heard of. I asked her straight up if she had some kind of theater obsession or if this was how she really was. She laughed it off but didn't really explain. We were a few weeks in by this point, and honestly, I was hooked despite all the weirdness. I liked how different she was. It made life less boring. But I started digging a bit more, looking for her on social media, checking if she had any theater credits or anything. Nothing. No Instagram, no Facebook, no public profiles. It was like she lived entirely in this made-up world she created online. One day, she told me she was in a small theater company and invited me to see her perform. I was excited but also nervous. I wanted to finally see the real Anne, the girl behind the musical act. She gave me an address for the theater and I decided to go. The place was sketchy. Not some cool off-Broadway spot, but this rundown old building that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. The lights were flickering, and the smell was this weird mix of damp wood and an old fabric. I stood in the empty lobby, waiting for the show. No one else was there. No actors, no staff. I started to feel uneasy. I called Anne, but she didn't answer. Then I heard singing from backstage. It was her voice, but it sounded warped and eerie, like it was echoing off the walls in this creepy way. I tried the door to the stage, but it was locked. Suddenly, a man came out from a side door. He was older, kind of gaunt, wearing a costume that looked straight out of a ghost story. He asked me what I was doing there, and when I said I came to see Anne, he just stared at me and said she didn't perform anymore. I told him she invited me. His face twisted for a second, and then he said something like she was lost to the show, whatever that meant. I left as fast as I could, my heart pounding. After that night, Anne stopped answering my messages. No more singing texts, no more calls. I kept trying to reach out, but it was like she vanished. Then I found out from someone online that the theater company was a scam. No records, no shows, just some creepy people using it as a cover. That's when it hit me. Anne wasn't just a girl who liked musicals. She was living in some twisted fantasy, maybe with people who didn't want to be found. Her singing wasn't just passion. It was part of something dark and off. The whole thing freaked me out so bad I deleted every message and swore off dating apps for a while. But even now, sometimes I get a random message from an unknown number, just a single line from some musical, and I wonder if it's her, or whatever she really was, still trying to pull me back into that creepy, never-ending show. I was honestly just bored one night, scrolling through a dating app without any real expectations. You know how it is, endless profiles, a mix of people who seem interesting but never quite catch your attention. That's how I stumbled across Hassan's profile. There was something about him that felt different. Not flashy or over the top, just casual photos of him at a coffee shop, on hikes, sometimes with his dog. His smile was easy and genuine, not the forced kind you see all the time. We started chatting, and it felt effortless. Conversations flowed naturally, like we'd known each other longer than a few days. He was funny, and I found myself laughing more than I expected. Hassan talked about working in tech, which sounded cool but not intimidating. He mentioned his love for music, hiking, exploring new spots around the city, things I was into too. It was refreshing to connect with someone who didn't seem full of themselves or try too hard to impress. After a couple of weeks of messaging back and forth, Hassan asked if I wanted to meet up. I was excited but nervous. There's always that mix of hope and fear with first dates, especially when you've only talked online. We decided on a tiny coffee shop downtown. It was a little off the beaten path, tucked away between art galleries and vintage shops. I'd been there once before. It had that cozy, artsy vibe, with dim lighting, old posters on the walls, and plants hanging from the ceiling. The kind of place that makes you want to linger over your drink, escape the noise of the city. I got there early, heart pounding but hopeful. I ordered a latte and sat by the window, watching people pass by outside. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and the soft hum of indie music set a calm mood. My phone buzzed, a message from Hassan saying he was almost there. When he walked in, he looked just like his pictures. Tall, wearing a casual hoodie and jeans, a bit scruffy in that effortless way that somehow works. He smiled when he saw me, and for a moment, everything felt real. Like this wasn't just a random meetup, but something that could actually turn into something special. We sat down and started talking, everything flowing as easily as it had online. I was starting to relax, genuinely enjoying myself, when suddenly the door slammed open. The cozy little coffee shop went from warm to electric in an instant. A woman stormed in, her eyes blazing with fury. I didn't catch her face clearly at first, but the way she moved, like she'd been waiting there, made my stomach drop. She headed straight for Hassan, yelling words that sliced through the calm air. Liar. Cheater. I caught fragments. We're not broken up, you promised. You're playing both of us. But it was all a jumbled mess that felt like a bomb exploding right where I was sitting. Hassan's face drained of color. He looked panicked, angry, and embarrassed all at once. The woman kept shouting, accusing him of things I couldn't believe. The people in the coffee shop were staring now, some whispering, others just wide-eyed. The cozy atmosphere vanished, replaced by awkward tension and discomfort. I felt like I was shrinking in my chair, wishing I could disappear. The woman pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages she claimed were proof of Hassan's lies. I saw words like cheating, lying, and dates that contradicted everything Hassan had told me. It hit me. This guy I thought I was starting to trust had been hiding a whole other life, or at least a whole other relationship. Hassan tried to speak to explain, but she cut him off every time. She said he wasn't single, that he'd been deceiving me the entire time, that he was still with her, and probably others too. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, humiliated, confused, and utterly betrayed. How do you prepare for something like this? One minute, you're excited about a first date with someone who makes you laugh and seems real, and the next, you're the unwitting audience in a messy public showdown that drags your trust through the mud. After a few agonizing minutes, the woman stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Hassan slumped back into his chair, looking exhausted and defeated. I wanted to ask questions to get his side, but my mind was spinning. The whole night felt like it was collapsing around me. I paid for my latte in a daze, barely able to meet Hassan's eyes. Without saying much, I told him I had to go and left the coffee shop, heart pounding, head swirling with disbelief and sadness. Walking home, I replayed the scene over and over in my head. The way Hassan smiled, the way the woman barged in, the proof on her phone. It was like the ground had shifted beneath me. Everything about Hassan that had felt genuine now seemed like a carefully crafted lie. I tried texting him afterward, asking for answers, but he never replied. Checking his profile online later, it was gone, like he never existed. It was as if the whole thing had been a mirage, an elaborate illusion that had broken apart at the worst possible moment. Since then, dating apps have felt like traps to me. Every new message or match brings that gnawing anxiety, the fear that the person on the other side isn't who they say they are. It's exhausting, this constant doubt. What's worst is the loss of hope. That night, I felt a flicker of possibility, a chance at something real. Then it was snatched away, replaced by confusion and embarrassment. And sometimes when I'm alone, I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust someone again online, or if every new connection will just be another setup for a disaster like that. Catfishing isn't just about fake profiles or photos. It's about how it can destroy your faith in people, how it makes you question your own judgment and worth. That night wasn't just a bad date. It was a brutal lesson in trust and betrayal, one that still stings every time I think about it. So this whole thing started when I met Abby online. She wasn't just some random girl, or at least that's what she made me think. Abby said she was an influencer, like the real deal. Said she had thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of followers, that she posted cool videos and photos every day, and that her life was kind of a constant stream of people paying attention. I won't lie, that stuff kind of impressed me. I mean, who wouldn't want to get to know someone who seems to have that whole online fame thing going on? We messaged for a bit, and honestly, it felt like she was living this super exciting life. She'd talk about collabs with brands, shout-outs from other influencers, even little parties and meetups she went to. She made it sound like she was on this fast track to something huge, and for a second I got caught up in it. The pictures she sent were all perfect, bright, professional, some with filters, some from events that looked legit. But after a while I got curious. If she really was that popular, then finding her on social media should have been easy, right? So I started searching for Abby, trying to find her accounts and get a real look at her world. But the thing was, nothing matched what she told me. The accounts I found with her name had only a few hundred followers, like 300 or so, and the posts were nothing like what she described. No collabs, no parties, no big events, just a bunch of selfies and random memes. That didn't add up at all. I tried to ask her more about it, but she always had excuses. Said she had a private account for her real fans, that she kept her big stuff separate from her regular posts, and that the other accounts weren't hers. It felt sketchy, but I pushed it aside because, honestly, I liked talking to her. I wanted to believe that maybe she was just being careful with her real online life. So I kept talking to her, hoping I'd get invited to that secret account or see something real. But every time I tried to get proof or even a simple live video, she changed the subject or say her phone was acting up. The more I asked, the more it felt like I was chasing shadows. Then one day I decided to dig deeper. I took the photos she sent me and ran them through reverse image searches. I wanted to see if these pictures were actually hers or stolen from somewhere else. What I found shook me. Some of the images matched profiles of other girls, completely different people, different countries, and some from way back years ago. A couple were from random fashion blogs, and one was even a stock photo. That was the moment I realized Abby wasn't who she said she was. I tried to confront her, but there was no real answer. Suddenly, the messages slowed down, then stopped. No more updates, no more chats. It was like she disappeared off the face of the app. But I wasn't done. I wanted to know who Abby really was and why she'd do this. So I kept digging, piecing things together like a bad puzzle. The weirdest thing was the small account with 300 followers. It wasn't just a fake or inactive page. It had a very active comment section, and people seemed to know her. The comments were casual, like friends just chatting. No fan worship or hype like you'd expect from a real influencer. That's when I noticed something even more disturbing. Some of the people commenting were calling her out, saying she lied about her followers, that she made stuff up to look better, and that she'd fooled a bunch of people before. One commenter said she'd been caught catfishing multiple guys, making up stories about her life, and disappearing when they asked for proof. I kept scrolling through those comments, and the stories got worse. There was talk about her using fake names, pretending to be someone she wasn't just to get attention or money. People talked about feeling humiliated and hurt after realizing she was lying the whole time. It wasn't just some innocent mistake. It was like a game to her, and I was just another player. By this point, I was done feeling sorry or confused. I felt angry, but mostly I felt grossed out that someone would waste my time and emotions like that. And the worst part, I'd fallen for it. I believed in this made-up life and someone who wasn't real. The whole influencer fantasy was just a mask. After that, I stopped looking for Abby online. I figured it was better to just cut her out completely and move on. But every now and then, when I scroll through social media or see those influencer posts, I get this weird feeling. Like somewhere out there, Abby is probably doing the same thing to someone else, making up stories, sending fake pics, and playing with people's trust for her own amusement. So yeah, that's my story about being catfished by a girl who claimed she was way more famous than she really was. It wasn't some crazy thriller or a violent horror story, but the way it messed with my head and the trail of it all. That felt like a horror all on its own. Not knowing who you're talking to or what's real, and then realizing you're just part of someone else's game. That's the kind of thing that sticks with you. I gotta tell you about this dude, Dave. Honestly, I thought I had met the guy of my dreams online, but it turned into this nightmare that messed with me way more than I expected. The whole thing started pretty normal. We'd on this app, just scrolling and chatting like you do. But right away, Dave was different. He didn't just say he was doing okay, he bragged. Not in an annoying way at first, but like he was living this insane lifestyle. He had this vibe like he was rolling in cash, the kind of guy who just casually drops hints about private jets, fancy cars, and vacations that looked like they were straight out of a movie. I mean, who wouldn't want to talk to someone like that? Someone who seemed like they had everything figured out. I started imagining this life with him. Dinners in fancy places, weekend trips to the coast, a total upgrade from my usual grind. The photos he sent looked legit, at least to me. There were shots of him in these high-end clothes, always at some kind of flashy spot, a nice watch glinting on his wrist. Everything screamed success. At first, I thought it was just one of those things, people try to look cooler online than they actually are. But Dave, he went way beyond that. He talked about investments, stocks, his business empire, and sometimes dropped these little details that made me think he really knew what he was talking about. He was smart, or at least that's what I thought. I started trusting him more and more, believing in the story he was telling. I even felt myself bragging about him to friends, telling them about this mysterious guy who seemed to have his life together. We'd spend hours texting, talking about everything from music to travel to our favorite movies. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world that mattered. I was head over heels. When he told me about his latest trip to Europe, with photos of stunning beaches and sleek cars, I believed every word. I told myself I just needed to be patient until we met in person and everything would click. Then one day, after weeks of talking, I worked up the courage to ask if he wanted to meet. He said sure, sounding casual, but like he was actually looking forward to it. We set a date. I was nervous but excited, imagining our first meeting would be just like his stories, something glamorous or at least memorable. So I got dressed up, put on my nicest outfit, and headed out. When I arrived at the place he chose, my heart sank a little. It was a tiny coffee shop in a rundown part of town, the kind of place you pass by without a second glance. I thought maybe he was trying to keep things low-key, not wanting to show off right away. I told myself it didn't matter, that the person was more important than the place. Then Dave showed up. He looked nothing like the pictures. I'm not talking about a little difference or a bad angle. He looked tired, worn down. His clothes were old and didn't match the style he'd shown me online, and that flashy watch. Nowhere to be seen. His smile was forced, like he was trying to pretend this was normal. I tried to convince myself maybe he just had a bad day. Maybe this was a real him behind the photos and stories. But as we talked, the cracks started showing fast. When I asked about his business and investments, his answers got sketchy. He was vague, avoiding details, and seemed nervous. He kept checking his phone like he was waiting for something or someone. Then, out of nowhere, he started asking me for money, not bluntly, but little things that didn't sit right. Could you help me cover this bill? I'm short this month, or I have a trip coming up. Maybe you could spot me a bit. Each ask was wrapped in some excuse, some promise that he'd pay me back. I froze. This wasn't the guy I thought I was talking to. I left that meeting feeling wrong, like I'd been tricked, but I wanted to know the truth. So I went digging. I searched everywhere, social media, local forums, anything. What I found broke my heart. Dave wasn't rolling in cash. He was broke as hell, living in a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper, working a dead-end job barely covering rent. Neighbors complained about him being behind on bills, and some people who knew him posted stories about how he was always asking for money, living way beyond his means, caught in a cycle of lies. The photos he sent, stolen or borrowed from other accounts. The lifestyle he bragged about, a fantasy he built to escape a reality he hated. It was hard to accept. I kept hoping I was wrong, that maybe he had a reason or was going through something. But the truth was clear. He was living in a lie, and I had been caught in it. The worst part, Dave didn't stop. Even after I found out, he kept messaging me. More lies, more promises, more requests for money. It's temporary, I swear. Just help me out this once. He twisted the truth every time, making me feel guilty for wanting to walk away. It felt like I was stuck in this endless loop. Every time I tried to break free, he pulled me back with sob stories and false hope. The whole thing was a total mind screw, feeling like I'd been fooled not just by a few fake photos, but by someone actively living a fake life. Dave wasn't just pretending for fun or attention. It was like he was trapped in his own lies, dragging anyone close into chaos. Eventually, I stopped replying, blocked him on everything, deleted his messages, but the damage was done. It made me question my judgment, my ability to trust. It left this bitter taste whenever I think about dating apps or meeting new people. Sometimes I wonder how many other people are caught in similar traps, dealing with Dave's. People who build fake worlds online to escape their reality and end up hurting others along the way. So yeah, that's my story about Dave, the broke guy pretending to be some millionaire. It wasn't a horror story with ghosts or monsters, but the way it twisted real feelings and trust into something ugly. That's the kind of horror that sticks with you long after the screen goes dark. I wasn't expecting to fall for someone like Jazz. Honestly, I didn't even know what to expect when I started talking to her online. At first, it was just casual, scrolling through profiles, swiping, whatever. But then her messages caught my attention. Jazz wasn't like the others. There was something about her way of talking, her sense of humor, the way she was real without trying too hard. I thought she was just another girl with a good vibe, but I was wrong. She sent me a picture early on. It wasn't your typical selfie or filtered photo. Her face had scars, kind of jagged and patchy, like she'd been through some serious fire or something. It looked painful just to see. Most people would have scrolled past or judged, but I didn't. I couldn't. There was this honesty in her eyes that didn't need fixing or hiding. I wanted to know her story. She told me she was a burn victim, and yeah, it hit me. Not because I pitied her, but because she'd been through hell and still had this spark. Her scars were part of her story, part of who she was. That made her different, real, and I got hooked. We started talking all the time. Every night, texts, calls, late talks about everything and nothing. I learned about her past, the accident, the hospital stays, the surgeries, the struggle. It wasn't easy for her, but she didn't want me to feel sorry for her. She was stronger than most people I knew, fighting every day just to be herself. After months of this, I wanted to meet her in person. The usual anxiety kicked in. Would it feel the same? Would the scars be harder to handle in real life? But I pushed those thoughts away because, honestly, none of that mattered when it came to Jazz. When we finally met, it was surreal. She looked exactly like her photos, but there was this warmth about her, like the scars weren't just marks, but badges of surviving something awful. I couldn't believe how normal it felt, like we'd been doing this for years instead of months. The connection was real. From there, everything moved fast. We fell into this rhythm, laughing at dumb jokes, sharing quiet nights, building a life together. I didn't care about her scars. They were just a part of her, and she was the only person I wanted around. People stared sometimes, but I never cared. Jazz was my person. 3 years later, we're married. It's not perfect. No relationship ever is, but it's ours. We built something solid from something that started out online and could have been a complete disaster. I love her like crazy, scars and all. But here's the twist nobody expects. One night, out of nowhere, Jazz's past caught up with us. I was going through her phone, not because I was suspicious, but just curious about some old photos she never shared. That's when I found something that stopped me cold. Hidden messages, deleted conversations, and photos that looked like they were from years before we even met. It wasn't just her story about being a burn victim. There was something else. Something darker. Turns out Jazz wasn't just a survivor of an accident. She had been hiding a secret that changed everything I thought I knew about her. Those scars weren't just from a fire, or so the story went. She'd been involved in some messed up stuff back then, something violent and twisted that she never wanted me to see. I kept digging. The more I looked, the worse it got. There were hints of fights, people warning her, police reports that I could barely make out. It was like a whole part of her life was erased and rewritten for me, like the person I thought I loved was just a version of herself she wanted me to believe in. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about how someone you trust so much can be a total mystery, even after years. I loved Jazz, but I realized I didn't really know her, not the full story. It felt like living with a stranger. After that, things got tense. Jazz noticed I was different, distant, and she started shutting down. I didn't blame her, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was always just out of reach, like a door I wasn't allowed to open. We talked about it, or at least I tried to, but the deeper we went, the more I felt like I was drowning in a story I didn't sign up for. I realized love doesn't always fix everything, especially when it's built on secrets. Still, we stayed together. We kept going like nothing had changed on the outside, but inside, I was wrestling with questions that had no answers. The scars on Jazz's face were real, but the scars in our life together, those were invisible and somehow worse. 3 years in, I'm still here, married to someone I adore, but can't fully understand. Jazz is still the same person I fell for, but now I know people carry shadows behind their smiles. Sometimes those shadows show up when you least expect them. That's my story about Jazz, the girl with scars, the girl I loved, and the girl whose past was a nightmare I never saw coming. Man, I thought I was just getting a new boyfriend, but like I was way worse than I ever imagined. It started like any other dating app thing, just me swiping, wasting time, and then this guy, Alan, pops up. His profile was perfect, or at least what I wanted to see. Clean pictures, smiling, a decent job, and some hobbies that sounded chill. He seemed normal, not those weirdo profiles you see sometimes. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but talking with him was kind of fun at first. We messaged for a while, and he was sweet, funny, and seemed really interested in me. He told me about his life, his job, his little apartment. I liked how he sounded responsible and steady. So yeah, I let my guard down. What I didn't know was Alan was nowhere near what he told me. He wasn't living in a neat apartment or even a real home. He was homeless, like actually living on the streets homeless. He wanted me to think he had his life together so bad it was scary. I only found out after I let him into my life way more than I should have. We'd been chatting for months before I agreed to meet him in person. He picked a coffee shop near my place. He showed up looking clean and put together, just like his pictures. I thought, okay, maybe this is legit. We started seeing each other regularly, and he seemed like he was getting more real with me every day. He talked about moving in together soon, and I was kinda into that. I mean, I liked him and was ready to make things official. But the red flags were there. Small stuff I ignored or didn't see because I wanted to believe. Like how sometimes he'd disappear for a few days, say he was traveling for work or visiting family. I never pushed too hard because who really knows someone they just started dating? He also always had weird excuses for why he couldn't hang out at my place or why he was always tired. I thought maybe he was stressed or something. Plus, he never wanted me to visit his place, which was odd, but I figured maybe he just valued his privacy. Then one day, after a few months, he asked if he could stay at my place for a while. Just until he got back on his feet, he said. I was hesitant, but told myself it wasn't a big deal. I wanted to help. So I let him move in. At first, it was fine. He seemed grateful and tried to keep things normal. But soon things started to change. He wasn't looking for a job or trying to get his life together. Instead, he acted like he owned the place, like he belonged there. I noticed he'd take over my fridge, leave messes, and expect me to clean up after him. He stopped being that charming guy from the app and turned into someone else entirely. One night, I came home earlier than usual and found him passed out on my couch. The smell was bad. I saw his clothes were dirty and he wasn't really taking care of himself anymore. When I asked what was going on, he just shrugged and said he was tired. That's when the pieces started to fall together. I decided to check his phone when he wasn't around, something I never thought I'd do. I found texts from people asking when he was going to pay them back or where he was staying tonight. One message said something like, "You're not welcome here. Get out." I felt like I was living with a stranger. The guy I thought I knew was a liar. He wasn't trying to fix his life. He was using me. The worst part, I had no idea how long he'd been doing this to other people. I found out later from a neighbor that Alan had been hanging around the neighborhood for months before I met him, asking people for money, crashing on couches, and stealing food. He wasn't the guy I met online. That whole persona was fake, a front to get inside my house, my life. I confronted him, but he just got defensive and angry. Things got tense. He said he was trying his best and I was the only one who cared about him. But I knew that was bullshit. I couldn't trust him anymore, not after everything. The worst was when I realized he had copied everything about me online. I liked my style, even some of my photos, to make himself look like the guy I wanted. I started deleting all our conversations, blocking him everywhere, but he still showed up at my door sometimes, asking for another chance or a place to crash. I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. I had to get a security system and change the locks. I thought dating someone was supposed to be about trust, but Alan turned it into this nightmare. The catfish wasn't just about lies online. It was about someone invading your life and using you without a care. I'm still dealing with what he did, and honestly, it freaks me out to think about how close I came to letting him take everything from me. So yeah, that's my story about Alan, the homeless guy pretending to be someone he wasn't just to get inside my world. It's messed up how people can fake all this just to survive, or whatever his reason was. But it messed me up more than I expected, and honestly, I'm still figuring out how to trust anyone again. I don't even know where to start with Carrie. Honestly, if someone told me this story, I probably wouldn't believe it. It's the kind of thing you hear about online, the classic dating nightmare, but living it. With worse. So yeah, here's what happened from my side. I met Carrie on some dating app. She seemed cool at first, funny, pretty chill, and not too into the usual selfie culture. She talked like she was all about laid-back vibes and genuine connections. We messaged for a couple weeks. I thought it was going pretty well. No huge red flags or anything weird, just regular texting and getting to know each other. She never really mentioned much about her life outside those messages. No talk about jobs, family, or any big stories. Just the usual, "what did you do today" stuff. I figured maybe she was just private or cautious. I didn't push for details, mostly because I liked how easy the conversation was. No pressure. After a bit, we decided to meet up in person. I was kind of nervous, but also excited. This felt like something real, you know? We picked a small cafe downtown, nothing fancy, just somewhere quiet enough to talk. When I got there, she looked exactly like her pictures. Same smile, same vibe. We started chatting, and everything seemed cool. I was feeling good about this, thinking maybe I actually found someone who wasn't playing games. But then, out of nowhere, this chaos erupted. Like we were barely halfway through our drinks when a bunch of kids stormed into the cafe, running around shouting, causing a scene. It was clear they were connected to her because Carrie's face changed instantly. She looked stressed, tense, like this was something she didn't want me to see. The kids were rough. Not just loud, but straight up terrorizing me, grabbing at my stuff, yelling, knocking over chairs. I didn't know what to do. Carrie tried to keep them under control, but it was obvious she wasn't used to managing this kind of chaos around new people. The whole thing was awkward as hell. That's when I realized something important she hadn't told me. Carrie was a single mom, like full-time with kids who clearly had no filter or respect for the situation. She never said a word about it before. No warning or heads up about having kids, let alone ones that would basically hijack our date and turn it into a mess. I was stunned because all those texts, all that time talking, there was no sign of this side of her life. It felt like a bait and switch. The rest of the date was a blur. The kids kept acting out, and Carrie was running around trying to calm them down while throwing nervous glances my way, like she was embarrassed or something. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to just walk out, but I also felt kind of trapped, like I'd already committed by showing up. After that day, I tried to figure out where things stood. Carrie kept messaging like nothing happened, acting like the date had gone fine. But for me, it was impossible to get past what I saw. I had no idea she was juggling this massive responsibility, and not telling me felt like she didn't trust me or maybe didn't think I'd stick around if I knew. It's wild because on the surface, Carrie seemed honest and normal, but this huge piece of her life was totally hidden, and when it crashed into my world, it hit like a bomb. I kept thinking about how this changed everything. I wasn't prepared to be involved with someone who had kids, especially kids who acted like that. It wasn't just a surprise, it was the reality of what that meant for any future with her. The weirdest part was how she acted afterward, like she expected me to just accept it and move on like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal for me. It wasn't just about kids, it was about honesty. If she couldn't tell me that up front, what else was she hiding? I don't know if Carrie was trying to protect herself or just scared of rejection. Maybe she thought if she told me I'd bail. But the way it all played out made me feel like I was just some guy she dragged into a situation without any warning. After a while, I stopped answering her messages. I didn't want to deal with the guilt or the awkwardness or the feeling that I was stepping into a life I didn't sign up for. I'm not saying I wouldn't have tried if I knew everything from the start, but this half-truth thing messed it up. The whole thing was like a horror story, but in real life. Not some supernatural stuff or crazy stalking. Just the crushing reality of being lied to and blindsided by something that should have been clear from the beginning. Now, whenever I think about Carrie, it's not about her looks or how funny she was online. It's about the date that turned into chaos, the kids that made me feel uncomfortable and unwelcome, and the quiet realization that sometimes people keep the biggest parts of their lives hidden. And those parts can explode when you least expect them. A girl who seemed normal until her kids showed up and turned my world upside down. A reminder that sometimes the truth is buried, and when it comes out, it's not pretty. I never thought I'd get caught up in something like this. You hear stories, right? People getting tricked online, meeting someone who turns out to be completely different. You think, that won't happen to me. I thought I was too careful, too smart for that. But I was wrong. That's how I ended up with Brandon. We met on this random dating app I downloaded mostly out of boredom. I wasn't even looking for anything serious, just someone cool to talk to, maybe hang out with if things clicked. But then Brandon showed up in my messages. And from the very first conversation, it felt different. He wasn't trying to be flashy. No lame pickup lines, no awkward one-liners. Just normal, thoughtful conversation. He asked about my day and actually seemed to care about the answer. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing, like my favorite snacks or how I hated mornings but loved late night walks. It felt like someone was finally paying attention, and it kind of knocked the wind out of me. I started checking my phone more often just to see if he texted. The first few weeks were like something out of a cheesy rom-com. He was sweet, not over the top, but in those subtle, intimate ways that felt real. He'd send good morning texts before I was even awake, and if I had a rough day, he'd know just what to say. It felt like he got me, like we had this invisible thread tying us together even though we hadn't met yet. I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I got lucky. But things started to shift, slowly, almost invisibly. At first it was small. He'd ask, "What are you up to?" Or, "Who are you with?" Normal stuff, I thought. The tone changed over time. The questions got sharper, more loaded. "Why didn't you answer right away?" Or, "Are you hiding something from me?" I'd laugh it off, tell him he was being silly. But it didn't stop. He made it sound like he was just looking out for me, like he was worried. And then, out of nowhere, I find myself apologizing for things I didn't even think were wrong. I started second-guessing my texts before sending them. Should I tell him I went out with friends? Would that upset him? If I waited too long to reply, I'd get guilt-tripped about not caring enough. He never yelled. He never said anything outright cruel. Instead, he used sweetness like a weapon. If I pulled away, he'd draw me in affection. If I questioned him, he'd twist it into me being insecure. It was confusing, because part of me still remembered the version of him that made me feel special. But I didn't realize back then that what he was doing wasn't love. It was control, dressed up as care. And then came the lies. Brandon had always looked like a model in his pictures. Tall, clean-cut, stylish, someone who looked like he had his life together. But there were always excuses when I asked to meet. He was traveling. He had work. Family issues. I gave him the benefit of the doubt over and over because I wanted to believe it. I'd already invested so much of myself into him that backing out felt like throwing away something real. When we finally met, everything shattered. The man who showed up was not Brandon, or not the Brandon I thought I knew. He was older, rougher, tired in a way that made him look like life had been beating him down for years. Nothing about him matched what he'd shown me. Not his face, not his voice, not even his name. I later found out that the photos he used weren't his. They were stolen from someone's Instagram. But that wasn't even the worst part. What hit me hardest was realizing how well he had studied me. He knew exactly how to make me trust him, how to keep me around. Every compliment, every sweet word, it had all been calculated. He didn't just lie to hide who he was. He lied to manipulate, to make me depend on him. After that meeting, I tried to back away. I told him I was done. But he didn't let go so easily. The messages kept coming. Sometimes apologies, sometimes begging, sometimes guilt. He'd say things like, "No one understands me like you do," or "You're the only one I have." And in the moments I felt weak, he pulled me right back in with kindness. Not because he cared, but because he wanted control. There was this one night I'll never forget. I finally told a close friend everything. It felt like such a relief, like I was finally cracking the mask. But when Brandon found out, I still don't know how. He blew up. Not screaming, but worse. He guilted me so hard I started to feel like I was the one doing something wrong. That's how deep I was in it. Eventually, the emotional back and forth drained me. I was exhausted. I stopped responding to his texts. Blocked his number. Deleted the app. But even after he was gone, his voice stayed in my head. Every time I felt happy, I'd hear him saying I didn't deserve it. Every time I doubted myself, it was his words fueling it. That's the real damage. Not the lies, but the part of yourself that someone like him takes with them. It took months to unlearn the things he made me believe about myself. To remember I wasn't some fragile thing that needed his approval to feel whole. I stopped wondering why he did it. Some people are just broken in ways you can't fix, and all they know how to do is break others with them. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my gut more. There were signs. The too perfect start, the weird excuses, the slow erosion of my confidence. But when someone is feeding you what you want to hear, it's easy to cover your eyes and call it love. Brandon was a catfish in every sense of the word, not just in looks, but in spirit. He pretended to be someone kind and thoughtful when really he was manipulative and cruel in the most quiet, destructive ways. And sometimes the scariest people aren't the ones who yell or lash out. They're the ones who smile while they slowly take you apart from the inside. So yeah, that's the story. No neat ending, no big moral. Just a hard lesson in how love, or what feels like it, can turn into something dangerous when it's built on lies. And if you've ever felt like someone turned your own heart against you, I get it. I've been there. And you're not crazy. You're just healing. This all started with one of those random matches on a dating app. You know how it is, just swiping through, not really expecting anything but bored enough to keep scrolling. Then Jenna showed up. Her pictures were different from the usual stuff. No perfect selfies or fake smiles, just some candid shots, kind of raw and real. She had this quiet vibe that stuck out. Something about her made me pause. We started chatting, and from the get-go, she told me she was mute. Like, not just shy or quiet, but completely unable to speak. At first, I thought it was a bit unusual, but honestly, it was kind of cool to talk to someone who used text to communicate. No awkward voice calls or awkward silences. Just words on the screen, and it felt easy. We messaged for weeks, and I swear it was like every message made me want to know her more. She shared photos of her life, her dog, her favorite books, even some sketches she'd done. We had a connection that was different from any other chat I'd had online. No pressure, no weird vibes. Just this calm understanding. Then came the part where she said she wanted to meet in person. I was excited, but also nervous. Meeting anyone from the internet can be weird, but with Gina, I felt like it might actually be okay. The thing was, since she couldn't speak, we only ever texted or video chatted where she'd write answers on screen. I didn't think much about it. We planned to meet at this small cafe near the park, a chill spot with lots of light and not too crowded. I got there early, heart pounding a bit, and waited outside. When she showed up, I almost didn't recognize her. The photos didn't really do her justice. She looked kind of different in person. Still quiet, still soft-spoken, but something felt off. She was carrying a notebook and a pen, the way she'd said she needed to communicate. But then, right after sitting down, she suddenly spoke. And it wasn't what I expected. Her voice was deep. Not just deep, but really, really low and rough, almost like it didn't belong to the person I thought I knew from messages. I froze. I wasn't sure if I was shocked, confused, or just thrown off. She said she pretended to be mute because she was scared people wouldn't accept her voice. She said it embarrassed her. Honestly, I felt torn. On one hand, I wanted to understand, to be kind. But on the other, I felt like I'd been tricked. All this time, I thought I was connecting with someone who couldn't speak, and now I realized she'd been hiding the biggest part of herself. After that first meeting, things got strange. She'd sometimes talk, but only in this deep, almost haunting voice, and then she'd go silent again. It was like she was stuck between who she wanted to be and what she thought I wanted. She still wrote a lot, but the voice was always there in the background, like this ghost hanging over everything. We kept seeing each other over the next few weeks, and the more I learned, the more complicated it got. Gina wasn't just pretending to be mute. She was hiding so much about herself. She didn't want people to see her true voice, but she also didn't want to lose the connection we built on silence and text. I could tell she was scared, but at the same time, I felt like I was caught in this weird lie I didn't know how to escape from. Her deep voice wasn't the only thing that made it hard. Sometimes she'd get really intense about how she wanted things to be. She'd get upset if I asked questions or tried to push her to open up more. It was like her silence was a shield, but behind it, there was this storm of frustration and fear. One night, we were sitting on her couch, and she finally broke down. Not in words, but in tears. She told me through writing that she'd been through a lot before I met her, bullied, teased, and made to feel like her voice was wrong. She said pretending to be mute was her way of controlling how people saw her, so she didn't have to face rejection again. I wanted to be there for her, but honestly, it was exhausting. The whole thing felt like a trap where every step forward meant more confusion. I started questioning everything. Was she really the person I thought I was falling for? Or was this whole relationship built on a lie that was getting harder to untangle? The worst part, I didn't just feel tricked, I felt scared. Not like physically scared, but scared of how much someone could hide and still pull you in. It was like Gina's silence was louder than any voice. Her deep, haunting words weren't just a surprise. They were a reminder that sometimes people keep parts of themselves locked away for reasons you'll never fully understand. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep doing it. The silence, the voice, the half-truths, it was all too much. I had to walk away before it broke me down more. But even now, months later, I still think about her. About how she used silence like a weapon and a shield. About the way she lied by omission but still made me care so deeply. This whole thing wasn't just about being catfished or tricked. It was about how people hide parts of themselves to survive, and how those hidden parts can sometimes hurt the people who care about them the most. This girl who pretended to be mute because her real voice scared her, and ended up turning what felt like a connection into something I couldn't escape. Not happy ending, just real messy stuff that sticks with you. I met him on this random dating app during winter break. Not one of the big ones. Just one of those off-brand apps that barely works, probably made by some guy in a basement a decade ago. I downloaded it because I was bored out of my mind, stuck at my mom's house with nothing to do and no one to talk to. Everything in town felt frozen and dead. The app was full of profiles that looked fake, but I wasn't exactly looking for anything serious. I just wanted something to kill time. His name was E. His profile was full of gin photos, shirtless selfies in mirrors, tight angles, heavy filters. The kind of pictures that make you roll your eyes and swipe left. But I didn't. Something about his message caught me off guard. He didn't lead with anything weird or desperate. He just asked how I was handling the cold and if I was from around there. It was normal. Casual. And when you're used to messages that feel like copy-paste trash, even a halfway decent one stands out. We talked for a few days. He said he was 29 and worked in fitness, lived in a town about 20 minutes away, didn't drink, didn't party, just focused on health and balance. He messaged often, almost too often, but he didn't say anything creepy, so I kept replying. I figured he was just lonely. I was too, honestly. He made a few jokes, talked about the gym a lot, and sent more filtered selfies, always shirtless. He looked good, but a little too good, like airbrushed or face-tuned or something. I brought it up once and he said he just had really good lighting. I wasn't planning on meeting up, but after a week, he asked if I wanted to get coffee. I hesitated, but I had nothing going on, and he suggested a public place, a diner just outside town, next to the highway. One of those places that's half empty even during the day. Lots of parking, neon sign. Always looks like it's barely staying open. It felt safe enough. Public, bright, and neutral. I agreed. When I pulled into the lot that night, something immediately felt off. The place was even more run down than I remembered. One flickering light above the door, 2 cars in the lot, and one of them was probably the cook's. I saw a guy sitting in the hood of a car parked near the edge of the lot, away from the lights. He stood up when I parked. I assumed it was he. And it was technically. But he looked nothing like the pictures. Not a little different. Completely different. He was older. Maybe mid-40s. He wasn't fit at all. He was soft, like he used to work out a long time ago and gave up. His face was puffy, eyes sunken in, skin kind of red like he was always flushed. I froze in the car for a second. Thought about leaving. But he saw me, and he waved like we were old friends. I got out. I didn't want to be rude. I told myself I'd say hi, maybe sit for 5 minutes, then make an excuse. But the second I got close, I felt the pressure of his stare. He was looking at me like he was analyzing something, like measuring me up. Like it was a test he needed to pass or fail. He smiled, but it was tense. His eyes didn't smile with it. We went inside and sat in a booth. The diner was dead. One server, one old couple near the back. He didn't say much at first, just stared. I tried to carry the conversation, asked him about the gym, his job, the usual stuff. But his answers were weird, short and vague, almost like he didn't know what he'd told me before. When I mentioned the pictures, I tried to keep it light, just asked how old they were. That's when everything shifted. His jaw clenched. He said he knew what I was doing. He said he knew I was one of them. I didn't even understand what he meant. I asked what he was talking about, and he leaned in across the table like he was about to tell me a secret. But it wasn't a whisper. He just said, "You think this is funny, huh? This little game." I laughed nervously. Said I didn't know what he was talking about. But his face was different now, like something inside him had snapped shut. He said people had been messing with him online for years. That women like me used fake names and fake interests to lead him on. He said I probably had a boyfriend hiding outside. That I was trying to humiliate him. He kept repeating that. "You think I don't see it?" I tried to end it. I stood up, said I needed to go. He stood up too fast, blocked the aisle of the booth. I remember looking at the waitress, but she was on her phone behind the counter and didn't even glance our way. He told me to sit down. Said we weren't finished. His voice wasn't loud, but it was tight, like he was trying to stay calm and barely holding it together. I sat back down because I didn't know what else to do. My heart was racing. I felt trapped. It was like being locked in a room with someone who didn't even see you as a person anymore. Just a symbol. Something he was trying to conquer or control. He talked for another 10 minutes, maybe more. I honestly don't remember everything he said. It blurred together. Stuff about being lied to, trust, about how everyone edits their photos so he had the right to do it too. He called me calculating. So that he could tell I was trying to pull something. I nodded along, just agreeing with whatever would keep him calm. At some point, he finally sat back and looked out the window like he was lost in thought. That's when I stood up again and walked to the counter like I was going to pay. I didn't even order anything, but I dropped a 5 and walked straight out. Didn't look back. I didn't hear footsteps behind me, but I also didn't hear the door open again. He stayed inside. I got in the car, locked the doors, and drove until I hit the main road. Then I pulled over and cried. I deleted the app that night. Blocked the number. I didn't tell anyone about it until months later. And even then, I made it sound like it wasn't that bad. But it was, because for those 30 minutes, I realized he didn't come there to meet me. He came there for some version of me he made up in his head. And when I didn't match that, something inside him broke. I still don't know if I was the first girl he met like that. But I'm scared I wasn't the last. I met her on Hinge. Or maybe it was Bumble. I honestly can't remember. All those apps start to blur together after a while. Her name was Foob. Her profile stood out, but not in a loud or flashy way. Just different. Black and white photos, soft lighting, kind of artsy. She had short, dark hair, round glasses, and this look in her eyes, like she was always thinking about something deeper than whatever you were saying. That look pulled me in more than anything else. She wasn't like most of the people I'd met on there. No gym selfies, no group photos I had to squint at to figure out which one she was. Her bio was vague, but I liked it. Something like learning to disappear gracefully, whatever that meant. She messaged me first. I remember that. Just said she liked my dog's name. We started talking from there. The conversations were slow, but kind of addictive. She didn't overshare, didn't ask for much, just kept saying little things that made me want to keep talking. Over the course of a couple of weeks, she sent maybe 3 or 4 photos. Nothing flashy. Just her sitting in a park, standing in a bookstore. She looked the same in all of them. Same glasses, same calm look, same clothes pretty much. I asked her to video chat once, but she said she didn't really do video. Said she had a thing about seeing herself on screen. I didn't push it. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to hang out. Nothing big, just coffee or something casual. She said her place was a good halfway point between where I lived and the city. It was this small town I'd never been to, one of those places that's technically still a suburb, but feels like a different world. The address she gave me was just outside the main part of town, near a patch of woods and old farmhouses turned into rentals. It was already kind of dark when I pulled up. The road didn't have any streetlights, just a long driveway with gravel crunching under my tires. The house was one of those old one-story places with a big porch and windows that looked black from the outside. The porch light was on, though, and the front door was slightly open. Not wide, but enough that I could see a little light coming from inside. I knocked first. No answer. I called out her name, but still nothing. Then I stepped inside. That was the last moment anything felt normal. The second I crossed the threshold, I heard a heavy click behind me. I turned around and the door had shut. There wasn't a handle on the inside, just a flat panel of wood. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. No keyhole, no latch. I stood there for a second, just staring at it, thinking maybe it was stuck or some weird old house thing. That's when I noticed the cameras. There was one in the corner of the room, another on a shelf above the couch, one tucked near the ceiling, pointed right at me. Red lights on all of them, watching. The room looked normal at first glance. A couch, coffee table, bookshelf. But nothing had dust on it. Everything was spotless. Not lived in, just arranged, like a set. I looked around for Foob. No sign of her. Then her voice came through the speakers. Not loud, not screaming, just casual, like we were still chatting. She said she was glad I came. Said she'd been preparing for this. She called it a little project. She told me to sit down. I didn't. I tried to find another way out. There were no windows in that room, just framed photos on the walls, black and white like her profile. They weren't of her, though. They were all of other people, blurred faces. Some of them looked like security cam footage. Others looked like they were taken without the person knowing. Then she told me there was only one way out. A game. I couldn't see her. She said she could see me. Said she'd been watching for weeks, planning everything. She'd studied what I liked, what I didn't. Knew how I reacted to certain words. Said most guys didn't make it this far. That I should be proud I was interesting enough to qualify. I tried every door in the place. None of them opened. Every time I touched a doorknob or a drawer or moved something, she would comment on it. Through the speakers like she was narrating me. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she got quiet. Eventually, I found a small hallway that led to a dark room with just a single chair in the middle, a spotlight on it. She said if I sat, I could advance. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. I sat. The lights shut off. The next few hours, maybe it was hours, maybe longer, are a blur. The lights would come on in different rooms. Sometimes there'd be objects left for me. A notebook with scribbled writing. A video playing on loop. One room had a phone that just kept ringing, but when I picked it up, there was only static. She'd keep talking through the speakers, asking questions, saying she liked watching how I moved, saying I was better than the last one. I don't know what the point of any of it was. There wasn't a puzzle to solve. No obvious test. It was like she just wanted to see how long I'd stay sane. I stopped trying to talk back after a while. It didn't matter. At some point, one of the doors was open. No noise, no announcement, just open. I walked out, past a dirt driveway that wasn't there before, back to my car. The engine started like nothing happened. My phone had no signal until I was halfway back to the highway. No messages from her. No trace of her account. Nothing. I went back the next day with a friend. The house wasn't there. It told me it was empty. I mean, the land was just woods and grass. No driveway, no mailbox, like it never existed. And I haven't seen her since. Or maybe I have. Sometimes I think I catch glimpses of her in places. Someone walking past a window. Someone sitting alone in a cafe. Always the same glasses. Same eyes. But when I look again, she's gone. I met Luke on Instagram, which I know sounds dumb. I wasn't even looking to meet anyone. I had just posted a story of my dog doing something stupid, and he replied with some comment that made me laugh. I checked his profile after that. It was private, but the profile photo was of a guy with a backwards hat and this kind of smug smile. His bio was short, just his name, a city 2 hours from mine, and a camera emoji. He messaged me again a few days later. Said he liked my vibe. That's literally what he said. I like your vibe. I wasn't used to that kind of approach. Most people either send the same boring compliments or go too hard with weird pickup lines. Luke was kind of different. He didn't text in full paragraphs, didn't ask deep questions, didn't seem too interested in anything I was doing, but still kept messaging. That probably should have been a red flag. But at the time, it just felt like he was chill. He sent me pictures of himself eventually. He looked like the kind of guy who knew he was attractive. Light beard, jawline, tattoos, gym selfies, always wearing a chain or a hoodie. Kind of basic, but still good looking. I noticed he never sent videos though. He'd send pictures of him at the gym or heading out with friends, but it was always just him in front of a mirror or in his car. When I asked if we could FaceTime, he said his front camera was cracked. When I asked to call, he always had some excuse. Bad connection, busy, tired, whatever. It didn't raise a full alarm at first. I mean, a lot of us hate video calls. I figured maybe he was just insecure or awkward. But then the little things started to build up. He'd get weirdly defensive when I asked simple stuff, like where he worked or what he did on weekends. Sometimes he'd say he was out, then post nothing for hours and suddenly reply like nothing happened. And when I asked him anything directly, he'd flip it around, make me feel like I was being dramatic for even asking. It started to get into my head. He made me feel like I was lucky to even be talking to him, like he was giving me attention I didn't deserve. I know how stupid that sounds now, but at the time, it felt real. He'd compliment me, then say something that made me doubt myself. He once said I looked different than in my photos, even though we hadn't even met yet. He joked about girls using filters too much. He sent me a pic of me from my tagged photos once, and said this one's more honest, like I was hiding something. That hit harder than I thought it would. After about 3 weeks of talking, he finally said we should meet up. He picked a halfway point between our towns, a random diner off the highway. Real middle of nowhere vibes. I was nervous but kind of excited. I didn't tell anyone I was going, which was dumb. I just said I was running errands. I even put on makeup I normally wouldn't wear, trying to mess the way I looked in my profile, just in case he had high expectations. I got there 10 minutes early. The place looked dead. 2 trucks in the parking lot, 1 waitress inside. I waited in my car, texting him that I was there. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I'm here. Come inside." So I did. I looked around the diner and didn't see him. There was only one guy sitting alone in a corner booth. He looked up when I walked in. He waved. I didn't recognize him at first. My stomach dropped. It was him, but not the him from the photos. He was heavier. His face looked older. He had this tired, sunken look, dark circles under his eyes, messy hair, clothes that looked worn out. Still had the beard, but patchy. The voice was the same, though. That low, lazy tone I remembered from voice notes. I walked over, not sure what to do. He acted like everything was fine, like he hadn't lied, like nothing was off. No explanation, no apology, no, I know I looked different. Just straight into small talk. I sat across from him in silence while he ordered fries. He didn't ask if I was okay. Just kept talking about how boring his town was, how annoying people on Instagram were, how girls always overreact. He was rude, cold, but in that fake casual way where you can't even argue with it. When I asked about the photos, he said they're all me, and then told me I was being weird for making it a big deal. I felt stuck. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to leave and make it obvious that I was scared, but I was. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. He looked at me like he was deciding something, not like he was happy to see me. When the waitress dropped off his food, he didn't even thank her. Just grabbed a fry, looked at me, and said, "You're quieter in person." I was disappointing him. I didn't know what to say. I told him I had to leave soon, and he rolled his eyes. Said, "Of course you do." When I got up to leave, he followed me out. Said he walked me in my car. I didn't want him to, but I didn't know how to stop him. He stood way too close while I unlocked the door. Then he said I looked different in real life too. Said he wasn't surprised. I drove off without saying anything. He didn't message me after. I blocked him. I deleted the app. I didn't tell anyone the full story for a while. But I still think about it sometimes. The way he stared. The way he acted like everything was normal. The fact that he planned all of it, probably with other girls too. It wasn't just lies. It was control. And I don't think I was the first. I met Robin during a weird stretch of time in my life. It was late fall, and I had just gotten out of a boring job in a worse situationship. I had time on my hands, was sleeping too much, eating garbage, and scrolling through dating apps out of habit more than anything else. I wasn't really trying to be anyone, but I still kept swiping, sometimes just out of boredom. Robin's profile stood out. It wasn't the kind of profile that's trying to go viral with jokes or fake modeling shots. Just a few photos. Nothing flashy. No group pictures, no quotes. Just her. Long black hair, olive skin, kind of a tired look in her eyes, but she was pretty. She looked like she'd been through some stuff, but not in a way that made her seem dramatic, just real. We matched on a Tuesday, I think. She messaged me first. Just said hi, nothing else. We talked in short bursts. Nothing deep, just little things. She said she worked freelance, something with photography. Her grammar was a little off sometimes, but honestly, I didn't think much of it. I figured English wasn't her first language, but she never brought it up. We talked about food a lot, about music, about how the weather was already trash and it wasn't even December yet. She didn't have any social media linked to her profile, which was unusual but not unheard of. She said she didn't really use it, said it gave her anxiety. When I asked to FaceTime once, she told me her camera was broken. Another time she said she was at a friend's place and didn't want to be rude. Always an excuse, but never mean about it. It dragged on for a few weeks. Honestly, she was hard to pin down. Sometimes she'd reply fast, other times she'd disappear for a day or two. But when she was around, she made it feel like I mattered. She'd say she missed talking to me, or ask if I'd eaten, or tell me she dreamed about me. It was the kind of stuff that sounds cheesy when you say it out loud, but it hits different when you're hearing it at 1 a.m., lying alone in bed with your phone lighting up your face. Eventually, we decided to meet. She didn't want to go out in public, though. Said she wasn't good in crowds. Said she preferred one-on-one things. So she asked if I could pick her up and maybe watch a movie at her place. She gave me an address in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town I didn't know very well. I looked it up. It was a duplex near a big warehouse district. Kind of by the way, but nothing that set off alarms. When I got there, the place looked half abandoned. One side of the duplex had boarded up windows. The other looked lived in, kind of. A dim light in the living room, blinds half open. I texted her that I was outside. She replied immediately and said the door was unlocked, just to come in. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, it was dumb. But at the time, it felt more awkward to say no, so I went in. The second I stepped inside, something fell off. The living room had furniture, but barely. A couch, a coffee table, and a TV that wasn't on. No decorations, no pictures on the walls, not even curtains. The air smelled like burnt plastic and cleaning spray. I didn't see Robin right away. Her voice came from the hallway, said she'd be out in a minute. So I sat down. She walked in a minute later, and that's when everything shifted. She looked almost like her photos, but not quite. Same hair, same body type, but older and thinner. Way thinner. Her eyes looked sunken, and she had a nervous twitch in her jaw, like she couldn't stop clenching her teeth. She was wrapped in this oversized hoodie and kept adjusting her sleeves like she didn't want me to see her arms. She didn't sit down, just stood near the wall, watching me, and she asked if I had any money. I thought she was joking at first, but she repeated it, then asked if I could help her out. Said she was in a rough situation. I asked what was going on, and she got defensive. Told me not to freak out. Said she wasn't from here, like, not from this country, and she was staying with people who expected her to pay rent in cash every week. Said she didn't have papers. Said she'd been using fake names for months. She told me her real name wasn't Robin. I was quiet for a while after that. She kept talking, telling me not to be scared, that she wasn't dangerous, that she just didn't have options. She said the dating app was her only way to meet people without risking the cops or immigration finding her. She said she'd been talking to a lot of guys. Some gave her money, others didn't. She said most of them ghosted her after finding out, and she asked again if I could help. I told her I didn't have cash on me. That was the truth. She looked disappointed, then asked if I could at least give her a ride to a gas station. I didn't want to say no, but every part of me was screaming to get out. I told her I needed to use the bathroom first, just to get a minute to think. When I stepped inside, I saw a phone charging on the sink. It wasn't the same kind of phone she texted me from. I turned the screen on and saw a string of messages from other guys. At least 5 or 6 different names, all recent. All asking where she was. One said, "You owe me money." I walked out of the bathroom and told her I had to go. She didn't argue, just said okay. No guilt trip, no goodbye. I left and drove home without music, just silence. I blocked the number, deleted the app, and sat in my room that night staring at the wall. A few days later, I got a message from a different account. Different name, different photos, but I recognized the voice in the texts. Same way of talking, same timing. I didn't respond. I don't know where she is now. Probably still out there, still finding people, still using someone else's name. The weird part is I'm not even mad, just tired. Like I brushed up against someone else's messed up life and barely got out of it. I met Robert through Snapchat one night when I was feeling really bored and kind of lonely. It was spring break and all my friends were out of town or busy with their own stuff. I had no plans, just scrolling through stories late at night when I saw his. It was a blurry picture of a hoodie, a chain, and what looked like cash spread out on a table. It was the kind of thing that usually makes me roll my eyes, but something about it caught my attention. I sent him a message asking what the money was for, just a dumb question to start a conversation. To my surprise, he replied almost right away. He was casual, saying something about just some stuff, and making a joke about being a part-time artist, but I wasn't really convinced. His snaps were full of the usual urban vibe. Graffiti-covered walls, cigarette smoke curling around him, skateboards leaning against the wall. He was tall, lean, with messy dark hair, and those close-up shots of his face that looked effortless but definitely staged. Over the next week, we messaged almost every day. He didn't pressure me for anything, and he seemed surprisingly chill. He'd send me little clips of him skateboarding or just hanging around corners of the city where no one else would dare to go. He talked about music, dogs, random things. It felt like there was some honesty there, even if I knew I was probably romanticizing it. He finally asked for my number and I gave it to him, thinking nothing would come of it. That's when things started getting weird. At first, our texting was normal, messy but normal. He'd disappear for hours, then pop up with a snap of his face or some random comment. But soon the talks got darker. He hinted at being involved with business that wasn't exactly legal. I didn't ask much because, honestly, I didn't want to know. I liked the excitement, the mystery, the danger in not knowing. He told me about being chased, about losing friends to bad choices. I thought he was exaggerating. Everyone online tries to seem cooler than they are. But one night, he sent me a picture of bruises on his arm and said it wasn't from fighting, but from someone trying to send a message. It freaked me out, but I kept texting him. Eventually, he asked to meet up. I wasn't sure why. We'd never done more than text and send a few photos, but I agreed. I was curious. He picked a spot in this rundown part of town, an old parking lot next to a gas station that smelled like trash and gasoline. I was nervous on my way there, driving past graffiti-covered buildings and streets littered with broken bottles. When I got out of the car, he was waiting by a rusted pickup truck. He looked nothing like his photos online. His hair was greasy, his clothes dirty and stained. His eyes were wild, darting around like he was watching for someone or something. I wanted to turn around, but he smiled, and for a moment, it felt like the guy I talked to was still there. He told me to hop in the truck, but the smell hit me immediately: weed, sweat, and something I couldn't place. Inside, the seat was torn, and there were small baggies with white powder scattered on the dashboard. I realized I was in the middle of his world, a world I had no idea about. He didn't talk much on the way. When he did, it was about the people who owed him money, about deals that went bad, about nights where he barely slept because of paranoia. I was quiet. I didn't know how to respond. At some point, he pulled over behind a strip mall and pulled out a small baggie. He offered it to me. I said no, but he laughed and told me it was just to relax. I didn't feel relaxed. I felt trapped. That night, I stayed in his apartment. It was messy, walls peeling, with a constant hum of a police scanner in the background. He kept texting with different people, some of whom sounded threatening. I realized then that I had stepped into something way bigger than just a bad date. The next morning, I wanted to leave. He insisted I stay just one more day. I felt like a prisoner but didn't want to cause a scene. I was scared of what he might do if I left too soon. Days passed, and I learned that Robert was involved in drug dealing. Not just small-time stuff, but something bigger. There were moments where I thought he was going to snap. When he disappeared for hours, I worried that maybe he'd been arrested or worse. One night, he came back bruised, bleeding. He wouldn't say what happened. I called a friend for help, but Robert found out and got angry. The fear I've been trying to ignore hit me hard. Eventually, I managed to leave. It wasn't a heroic escape, more like slipping out when he was asleep and running as fast as I could down the street. I didn't look back. Even now, months later, I get texts from numbers I don't know or strange messages on social media. Sometimes I wonder if he's still around, watching, waiting. I never told anyone about him, not fully. I didn't want to be judged or pitied. But the whole thing has stuck with me, in the lies, the danger, the way someone can seem so normal online and then turn your world upside down. It wasn't some wild horror movie. It was real. It was terrifying. And it started with a simple message on a screen.